The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. This is Ray Savage with Cambium Networks. Thanks for joining us today for this webinar. Today we'll be talking about the new PTP 670 platform. And joining us is product manager Sagar Deshpande. The presentation is being recorded and it will be available on the community sometime later today. If you do have any questions during the course of the presentation, please use the question and answer dialog box on the right-hand side of your screen. And with no further ado, Sagar, it's all yours.
Thank you, Ray. Hello, everyone. My name is Sagar Deshpande. I'm the product manager for point-to-point unlicensed portfolio. So in this diagram, we see all the range of products that we have for Cambium networks, starting on the left from CN Pilot with its residential and enterprise solution. We have CN Maestro, which connects all of it together with respect to all wireless devices. We have EPMP solutions and PMP, which is point to multipoint. And towards the end, the right side is the PTP 700 or the 600 series. So today we'll be going over our latest product, the PTP 670. And the agenda for today that we have is, firstly, we are going to do a quick overview of the point-to-point portfolio. Next, we're going to introduce some of the features of the PTP 670, and then we are going to go a little bit deeper into three of them. One is the DSO, one is the HCMP, and one is the OTAR frequency, OTAR keying. HCMP and OTAR are specific to the 670, but DSO is also comes from legacy heritage of the 650. We'll go into that a little bit later. Next, we're going to do a quick comparison of the PTP 670 versus the PTP 650 and what are its advantages over that. Next, we're going to do a quick overview of the PTP 670 benefits. After that, we're going to talk a little bit about product launch information and strategy, so what we have installed for you guys. And then we definitely are going to provide you more links where you can access like spec, white papers, and other information to understand more about PTP 670. All right. So the first one we're going to do is a quick overview of the PTP portfolio. So this is our current PTP portfolio. We have a PTP 450i, which is on the left. And then we have our current PTP 650, which has been there since a really long time. So that the PTP 650 comes in three flavors: the PTP 650, the PTP 650S, and the PTP 650L. The difference between the PTP 450i and the PTP 650, there are actually a lot of differences, but a couple of high-level differences are throughput rate is much higher for the 650 versus the 450i, and spectral efficiency is much higher for the 650 versus the 450i. So the advantages of the 650 versus the 670, we'll get into that a little bit later, but right now let's just focus on the vertical markets. So if we see the point-to-point market overall, so we can kind of categorize most of them into three buckets overall. One would be the wireless WISP providers. The second would be utilities companies or utility solutions. And third one would be public safety. And each of those applications is interchangeable in some sort of the other, but just to kind of keep it together, I've kind of listed out some of the use cases or like some of the customers that might fall into one of the buckets. So for wireless WISP providers, they have enterprise solutions like companies or hospitals. So hospitals, for example, they require dedicated lines. They always need constant streaming for video surveillance. Education is another area for enterprise solution. School, college campuses, hotels to backhaul most of their data, especially if it's like a big hotel which have like a lot of small guest areas or like small private islands where you want to connect most of their network to a backhaul IT provider service kind of thing. And also private service providers, you can kind of consider it as like high-end customers who really need dedicated lines for their private use. It's not it's mainly for like people who need 50 meg or 100 meg dedicated line just for themselves. The next area is the utilities. The utilities kind of broadly falls in three industry areas. One is oil and gas, the other is mining, and electricity and water agency. This also has, so some of the core qualities are like disaster preparedness, and which is very important in utility companies, and resilient net links, that if one link fails, you have a backup in that access part of it. And the third area that is the public safety. So in this public safety, we have mainly disaster recovery and video surveillance. So police for video capturing, or basic video surveillance, or disaster recovery in hurricane affected areas where the people don't have internet, which is one of the main, like these days, I think it's become more of a commodity, in a sense, like people need food, water, shelter, and internet as their base. And then, so internet has become such a common thing that even disaster scenarios, you definitely need internet so that people can talk to other people who are affected by that. All right. So now I'm just going to focus a little bit on the wireless service providers, and go a little bit more in detail as to like what areas or industries that we have, and what are its what wireless providers look for in general, and how our PTP 670 kind of fits into that space. So as I mentioned earlier, the wireless service providers kind of falls into different genres, but like the high level areas that you can kind of bucket them is like education department. And education, you can have school, college campuses, you can have training grounds, you can have anywhere where you want like a distributed kind of wireless service providers which you want to backhaul to like a particular location. The same can be applied to healthcare and hospitality. A lot of senior healthcare, senior citizens are placed in special houses where they definitely need much more constant attention. They need definitely much more video surveillance to just keep track of them and see, especially motion sensors. With the new technology these days, you need much more of that. So wireless is basically, which also helps the doctors and nurses to keep track of elderly in home care, in home age. Also, you have retail stores like big box chain stores where they definitely are using free Wi-Fi, or like free wireless service as a bait to get more customers into the malls. As we kind of know, like the malls in America, kind of it's harder to make money. So I think a lot of malls are looking for providing free Wi-Fi to get more people into their malls. So that's another area for wireless service providers. So mainly the PTP 670 provides a strong backhaul solution to cater to any of these areas by providing a strong backhaul link. And then in our portfolio, we have different products to kind of cater to the last mile parts of it as well. So we have the CN Pilot, which acts as the AP to talk to direct customers, but then the data can be backhauled through a PTP 670 to your IT or like your main website. So next, I just want to talk about one case study that we have in Nepal. So this is a village in the most rural part of the world. It's basically in the middle of Mount Everest. This is in Nepal. So this is a group of 150 village. It's a small community of about 150 people, and basically they didn't have internet at all, right? So it's a few thousand feet in the air, and it's covered. It's pretty much snowing most of the year. It's really hard to even forget about providing a wired line all the way there. So the PTP 650 was used to install as a backhaul link to talk to the villagers over there. So we used about 16 PTP relay links to talk from the mount of the base station to the village. So this actually provided a lot of definitely provided education for the people over there, for children to study, because they definitely couldn't go to school, so they could study at home. E-commerce for people to make products and sell them, and definitely tourism became a boom because a lot of people wanted to escape to this kind of area, and providing a good website and tourism website definitely increased their income this way. So fun fact is the PTP 650 was so high up in the air that there was no electricity at all. So you had to use solar panels to power the 650, and solar panels is actually used to power the entire village. So it's that obscure that you don't even have electricity running through there. So So the 650 has proved its ruggedness, and the same ruggedness is actually passed on to the 670 as well. So we already know that it works really well in harsh environments. So if we consider oil and gas companies, so the typical image that we get is going to be something like this. But actually in real, so this actually means like you're stuck in the middle of the really ocean, or like deep underground, where it's a really hostile environment, and you need to put a long distance backhaul. But in reality, it kind of looks something like this, where you have a lot of video surveillance that happens, uh, and then you need to monitor each and every aspect of it, because anything can go wrong at any time. So you have to always be prepared, and always have a really strong wireless backhaul solution, just to kind of monitor every aspect of this billion-dollar oil digging machine. So two things that definitely are important with respect to any oil and gas is going to be security, and is going to be resilience. So security in terms of cybersecurity, because you don't want hackers to hack into your oil containers, or water utility companies, or electricity utility companies. And these days, with the attacks being so powerful, and it's really hard to kind of protect. It's really hard to protect from other uh, attackers. So security is our top feature. The PTP 670 has really credible security, cyber security features that prevents any of these attacks that are coming in, and we constantly continue to update and fund softwares that continue to enhance its security features. Resilience, in the sense, it should be able to withstand deliberate attacks, either through cutting of lines due to wind or any other solution, or through naturally occurring threats as well. So by having a resilient solution, you can actually have a redundant network. In a way, you can, if one link goes down, you have another way of communicating back to your main long distance backhaul. So a couple of things for the oil and gas on utilities is going to be one, QoS, quality of service. So the PTP 670 has 8 queues for you to it has 8 queues for you to provide different quality of service levels, because some information is much more valuable than others, and some information are much more time sensitive than others. So by providing and dividing them into queues, you have a better opportunity to kind of handle what's going on. And also, network management is one of the critical pieces which adds to the security aspect of the PTP 670 for oil and gas industries. So a quick case study of Aguakan. So this is a company in Mexico, and they were tasked with improving the water quality and reducing operation costs in one part of Mexico City, in Mexico. So mainly they wanted to increase the coverage of their water quality and improvement services along some other districts. The public company or the public government did not want to invest that X amount of dollars in building the infrastructure, drawing up the lines, and drawing up the digging up cables for wireless service for providing wireless coverage. So they gave this task to this company, and they were able to expand using the point-to-point PTP 650 backhaul. So they mainly use the backhaul. As you can see in the camera, in the image, you have the main, on the left, you have the IT sector, which was main, that is one of their main end destination points. And then from there, they had a big point-to-point link, which is the first link between the main tower and the small tower. And then they had a PMP solution that kind of distributed the water quality or water monitoring systems across on the right side, like across new areas, which is a different part of a small region of Mexico. So they were able to do it definitely under budget, and they were really happy with the reliable performance of the 650 over a really long distance. So for public safety, so public safety kind of includes from government all the way to firefighting, or like police station, which is more of which is also including for network for video surveillance, or any of the fiber lines or extensions as well. So for example, readily preparedness or disaster recovery as well. So I want to do a quick last case study for one of each of them. So for this one, I have a case study from Southeast Asia. So we had the South Asian Games that happen every four years, and 8 countries participate in that. So this is a stadium in New Delhi, India, where there were thousands and thousands of spectators, and we were able to provide Wi-Fi solution to them. And for all of these spectators, we are able to backhaul all of the traffic through the point-to-point, point-to-point radios. So it is able to handle high capacity with high throughput as well. So the PTP 670 has a max throughput of 450 Mbps, and it's able to achieve really high throughput even under constrained, really high tough environments as well. Next, now we're going to do take a quick look at the PTP 670 and talk about some of its features that we have. But mainly first, the PTP 670 comes in two formats, the connectorized and integrated. Integrated is a 23 dBi antenna dish that we have. The PTP 670 is IP67 housing, so it's rugged. It has a metal enclosure, and it is useful for that. The connectorized version, you can connect it with any antenna dish. So it is you can use it either with any of your dishes, especially if you want to go really long distance, or you can pair it up with some other antenna. But the integrated comes with a 23 dBi flat panel, which kind of focuses more on the simple point-to-point distance as well. So this is the big slide that has a lot of information on the PTP 670. I'm just going to keep it up. I'm going to just talk a little bit about each of them, but we'll get into a little bit more detail for each of them as we progress along the slides. So as we know, the PTP 670, first thing you need to know that it's a sub 6 gigahertz radio, which means it operates from 4.9, including the public safety spectrum, all the way to 6.05 gigahertz spectrum. Now, it comes in a lot of channel sizes from 5, 10, 15, 20, 40, 45, and we'll kind of go into a little bit more detail. So it has three main ports. One is the GigE, which is Gig Ethernet port, which is the PoE. Next, it has the auxiliary port. So the auxiliary port can be used for wireless surveillance, like you can connect it has the ability to power a camera. So it has a 802.380 PoE out, so you can kind of power a wireless camera, you can power a wireless AP through that port, and it should continue that way. And the third one is the SFP, or the fiber port, if you want to configure it that way as well. It has adaptive modulation, which we'll get into a little bit later. It does support jumbo frame, and it has a really powerful processing power of 900,000 packets per second. That's a lot of packets, especially if you want to process like the case study that we had in Southeast Asia, where you have a lot of people connected on that, so you have a lot of traffic that is flowing through. So this is the graph for the PTP 670. So the bands represent the channel bandwidth that you can get. Obviously, as the more channel bandwidth that you have, the faster is your throughput. In this case, with the 45 megahertz channel, the max throughput that you can get up to is 450 Mbps, and this is so this graph changes with interference, with radio performance, and all that stuff. But this is supposed to be clean, how a radio is supposed to perform in normal without severe interference conditions. So you can expect to get really good throughput data by these for these channel bandwidths as well. So this is the different spectral efficiencies that we have. So the channel sizes change from 5 megahertz all the way to 45 megahertz, and the really advantageous part of this is a lot of times, especially in either developing countries or really congested areas, you cannot find a clean 40 megahertz channel. No matter what you do, wherever you search, it's such a limited source that you cannot find a good 40 megahertz channel. So you're forced to kind of reuse how much ever you have. So if you don't have options, you can't try to get the maximum bang for your buck. So for example, if you just have 30 megahertz channel, a 30 megahertz channel, you are forced to use a 20 megahertz channel for transmission, but you're wasting the 10 megahertz for that can be additionally used for transmitting more data. So by having the option of 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40, 45, you're able to allocate. You're trying to get the best bang for your buck in under any circumstance or any change as well. So this is adaptive modulation, which means as your network clears up, the faster you go, right? So for example, if it's a sunny day, there's no interference from any side, and everything seems to be clear, you can just start hitting the 256 QAM and then just continuously transmit at the maximum throughput rate. But let's say for some reason there's some interference that happens, kind of step down to 64 QAM, and then if the interference kind of keeps getting worse, you can kind of go all the way back to BPSK, which is really bad throughput. But a lot of times network congestion, you can't help it. So by having the adaptive modulation, which is hitless, which means if you step down from 256 QAM to 64 QAM, you don't lose any packets. No packets are dropped, which means there's no retransmission that happens. It just means you just move to the next level. That's it. It's called a hitless transition, so it shouldn't affect any of the packets being dropped. So this is like a quick way how. So you're always trying to be the best, or you're always trying to find out how many more packets can I squeeze into this time, given this signal to noise ratio or the interference level. So here I want to just talk about two topics, split frequency and ATPC. So ATPC actually stands for automatic transmit power control. So basically you're checking how much power I can transmit, or how much power am I saving by doing automatic power transmit control over it. So our radio has a max DX of 27 dBm. That doesn't mean you just blast through 27 dBm and use up all your electricity, because those are expensive. So for what you can do, so with this you have the ability to kind of shorten it or increase it automatically on its own, so you don't have to manually change it. So for example, in this scenario that we're going to talk about, ATPC comes in really handy a lot. So let's say you are on tower A and you want to connect to tower B. You've done your research and you find out, oh, you have a really good clean spectrum of 40 mega, you have a channel bandwidth of 40 megahertz that is available, and you should be able to get a throughput of around 400 Mbps with the PTP 670. And you know the blue channel is only available because the red channel and the green channel are already taken by other towers, and you get some interference because of those towers transmit not just to the tower but through the tower. So which means even if your tower is behind it, or if it's in the same tower as well, that also is applicable, you get the interference as well. So right now we know that 40 megahertz channel blue channel is the only one main channel 40 megahertz that you have for transmission. Let's say a few weeks, a few months after the deployment, there's a tower C and D, which is pretty relatively short, but they also are using the blue frequency of 40 megahertz channel. And once they start transmitting, since the radios between tower C and tower D don't have automatic power control, it basically blasts through the tower C and interference with tower B. So in this case, ATPC, so there's 2 or 3 options that you can do, right? So one is crank up the tower B power so that you're transmitting more and trying to get as much through power or as much data through to tower A, but it's going to be in vain because it depends on the interference level. Because if tower D is also interfering at really high power, it's still going to affect you regardless of how much TX power you're going to put in from the tower A side or tower B side. The next option is to change the frequency, but as you know, there's on tower A, it's already really congested and you don't have that many options to move around in. So under this circumstance, because of this scenario, your throughput drops from 400 Mbps to 100 Mbps. No matter what you do, without changing the space, without changing the radios from tower A to tower B, you just cannot get higher throughput. So one more option would be to move towers, which is definitely not ideal. So what solution we have is called the split frequency solution, which means you can transmit on one frequency and then receive on the other. So how it works in this case is on tower A, you're going to transmit on red because when it receives on blue, there's no interference of the blue frequency because of the other tower. Similarly, on tower B, you're going to receive on frequency red because the interference from the blue is not going to be affected at all. So by using split frequency, you can get around a lot of problems as well. And so what this means is 40 megahertz channel that you have. Let's say it's a 5/8 band, right? So then let's say you have 120 or maybe 150 megahertz of space that is available. So if you divide them up into 40 megahertz spectrum each, let's say if it's 160, you have 4 options on TX side and 4 options on RX side. So you ideally have 16 combinations of TX RX. So if you multiply 4 times 4, rather than just 4 individual bands that you have. So you just generally have more options for you to work with and more options for you to kind of play around so that you can get as much transmission as you can. So this is another feature of the PTP 670. So the PTP 670 supports line of sight, which is up to 155 miles, clear straight through, no problem at all. So the longest distance that we have manually measured, that was a case study, but I didn't add it to this because I didn't want to make it a longer this thing. But next time definitely I'm going to add that. So we had 2 towers on in Colorado, Denver, on 2 peaks on across the city of Denver, and then we were able to transmit from up to 245 kilometers, which is around 155 miles. It has near line of sight, which means if a part of it is affected by the Fresnel zone, so but not majority part of it, so it falls in the near line of sight NLOS, small n NLOS. So that is up to 25 miles. So generally, like trees, or like especially during winter, if you install it, and then in the spring when the leaves come back up, there's kind of a near line of sight thing where like part of the tree is covering the Fresnel zone. And then non-line of sight is up to 6 miles, which means you can using OFDM and using small subchannels which bounce off different interfaces, you can kind of reach your destination. But this is up to a really short distance of up to 6 miles. So let me just talk about the uplink-downlink symmetry. So basically, when you have a frame, you have a TX, and then you have a small space for transmission, and then you have a RX. And then you repeat the same cycle. So that's one TX, so one burst from the TX side and one burst from the RX side. So this is a 1:1 ratio. Let's say if you have a 2:1 or 3:1, or let's say if it is 2:1, so 2 for the master and 1 for the receiver node. So 2 bursts are going to happen continuously, and then you're going to have a node, a slave transmit back to the master in this case. So in this way, you have asymmetric ratios of data transmission. And where is it useful? So, and these are configurable adaptively. So where is it useful? Let's say a typical hospital, or let's say a typical enterprise, right? So early in the morning, people are probably going to download more a lot of emails and a lot of pulling in a lot of information. So you're going to have more of downlink to the enterprise point versus the upload. Or once it's in the middle of the day and then people are uploading videos or like other stuff, then it's going to be more of upload rather than download. So this is a case scenario, but then I can think of many more cases where there is adaptive modulation, because no one solution requires, I'm just going to use download at a particular rate. It's always going to be adaptive, and it's always going to be a different ratio. So you can either set it to a fixed one symmetry, or if it's 1:1, 2:1, so where you have dedicated burst durations, or like dedicated slots, so that you're guaranteed those frequencies. So for example, if you have 2:1 ratio, you know for sure you have 300 Mbps for uplink and for downlink, and then 150 Mbps for uplink. Whereas if you have adaptive, it kind of varies, and it just depends on number of packets that you have. Then you can kind of play around with that part of it. So next, I want to talk a little bit about DSO. DSO stands for Dynamic Spectrum Optimization. So how this works is you look at the channel online spectrum analyzer that you have, that's already available in each of the radios, and then you have a criteria condition that you determine, like if my signal to noise ratio, or if my power level is below a certain point because of interference from other channels, I am going to move from channel A to channel B. So you can set it, but channel B is not defined. So the radio figures out on its own which is the next best channel that it has to hop to. Then it tells the remote side that, oh, hey, I'm going to move from 5.8 to 5.9 band, or 5.8 to 5.7 for that 40 megahertz frequency, and it's going to move until, so it's going to be a hitless move, which means there's not going to be any packet drop. So everybody, both sides know which radio frequency that they're going to move to, and then automatically from the next frame, after the decision has been done or after the handshake has been done, they move to that frequency. So this happens on its own, so you don't have to keep track of any of this. So the advantage of this is you're always trying to get the best bang for your buck. So for whatever reason, if there's interference for, let's say, half an hour a day, where for whatever reason your tower just gets bombarded with interference, for that half an hour of the day, the radio automatically moves to another channel so that your throughput doesn't drop at all. So but once that is done, so this way you have a lot of combination channels that you can kind of move to different slots, so that you're trying to mitigate interference without dropping the actual link. So this would be a very good typical example of how we have. So this is the online spectrum analyzer, which kind of shows the power level from the 4.9 all the way to up to 6. This is just the overall spectrum. So you can kind of see in the 5.7 band, you have a lot of interference that is happening. So let's say you have a 40 meg channel in the middle, and suddenly you get a burst of interference that happens. So you can move from a 5.7 to maybe a 5.8, which seems to be relatively low interference. So this has a lot of applications, and you can also record this data, use it historically, so that you can kind of see like what trends and like at what time do I get the most interference, and how can I mitigate it going forward, or maybe I can change the how can I change so that it doesn't affect the interference performance. So to do a quick recap of the overall PTP 670 performance. So just to give a headline update, so the PTP 670 goes up to 450 Mbps, which can support a lot of data. It has a really high spectral efficiency of 10 bits per hertz spectral efficiency, which means even if you get a 5 megahertz channel, you can be guaranteed that you're gonna get 50 megahertz, because the bits per hertz. So whatever small slither of frequency that you get, we make sure that we try to use it to the maximum. It has a line rate of more than 900 packets per second. So this is really useful for like if you have a lot of people transmitting and then you want to process a lot of packets as a part of that. It has a maximum channel bandwidth of 45 megahertz. It has a fast adaptive modulation, which I talked about earlier, where you can kind of go back and or back and forth based on the interference level. So you can kind of drop to 64 QAM and then go up to 256 QAM based on the interference level. It has a really low latency, so it's because of fast processing power, it maintains a low latency part of it. It has a dynamic uplink to downlink ratio. So if you set it to the adaptive, you can kind of change the uplink downlink ratio, or you can keep it fixed where you have a fixed ratio that is already set. So it has a non-line of sight and line of sight, and it supports up to 256 QAM. So reliability wise, so the PTP 670 has DSO, which ensures that even if there is interference that happens, we are ready to mitigate it. It has a wideband operation, so you can choose which bands you want to work in. In the US, you have more options of if you want to move from 5.8 to 5.4, 5.1, 5.2. You have a lot of options in that. You have TDD sync, so that if you have multiple towers in the same, you can kind of sync so that there's no interference from each other. You have a split frequency ratio operations, which we talked about. We have spatial diversity between the H and vertical and horizontal to kind of provide a stronger this thing, especially if you are on flatter surfaces like surfaces of water or like concrete, where you get a lot of reflection that happens. So you have that ability. We have the LINKPlanner, which that's such an underrated tool that you can kind of use to calculate how much interference that you're going to get, add in a certain level of interference based on whatever you're seeing, and then kind of predict in a really predictive way how much real throughput data that you're going to get. So LINKPlanner is definitely one of the tools that complements the 670 and has currently our latest release has all the features for the 670 and it has all the specs parts of it applicable. It has
Sagar, we did have one question come in, and I think you just answered it, but I just want to make sure. The question is is the PTP 670 currently supported with LINKPlanner? Because I know just this morning we posted a new version, a new release of LINKPlanner.
Right. So we always are backward compatible. So which means even if you have a network deployed with the PTP 650, we are not going to remove the 650 from that, because I know a lot of people rely on that, and we are definitely not going to remove it. We are just going to add more products into it. So the PTP 670 is going to be added into it, but the 650 will not be removed from that.
Great, thank you.
Yeah. So next one, because the temperatures it supports is from minus 40 degrees Celsius to plus 60 degrees. So in the case of Nepal, where you have it, so the 650 is like a refresh of the 670 is like a refresh of the 650, and it has the same housing. So we expect the same performance that it has over there in really cold conditions as well. So a little bit about security features. The PTP 670 has AES 128 key and 256 key as well. It has multi-level user authentication. This is really useful for utility companies where you want tiered system of authentication rather than just one master person who has control over everything. You have radius authentication. You have out of band and SNMP v3, and automatic. We have remote password maintenance, which we'll get into a little bit. So we have over-the-air rekeying retransmission, so which is part of the remote password maintenance, but it's done on its own. So now I just want to move on from DSO and 670 features to some really special feature that we've introduced in the 670. It's called HCMP. So let's take a typical example of, say you want to connect four. So the radio tower has 4 radios, 4 antennas talking to 4 different solutions, right? So you have a home which needs 100 Mbps. Let's say you have an enterprise which needs about 100 Mbps. You have another home which has 100 Mbps, and then you have a shopping mall. They need 100 Mbps, right? So you put in 4 radios. You try to slither out 20 megahertz channel, which is really hard to find. So you kind of put place in those so that there's less interference, and you try to reuse some of them by placing them at a slightly different distance by using the same blue frequency twice. So it's really difficult to find like those slithers, but somehow you're able to find it. And so for 20 megahertz, you're only able to get maybe 100 Mbps. So what if there is a solution with the HCMP that you can have one radio, one antenna, and then you can talk to 4 or 5 up to actually 8 nodes, but in this case I've just shown 4, and you can provide dedicated throughput line for each of those endpoints. So for example, a home needs 50, you can dedicate just 50 megahertz to that, and it's a dedicated solution. So you're going to use the same channel bandwidth that you have, but you're going to dedicate some portion of it to node number 1 and these nodes can be changed going forward. So right now, and let's say the enterprise solution needs 120 Mbps, you can dedicate X number of megabits per second for that. And then for the house, you want to have it at 70, and so the shopping mall, you still want to keep it at 100. So having this 45 megahertz channel instead of having 4 into 20 is 80 megahertz, and instead of that you're just using 45 megahertz channel. But then by splitting the way you define or you allocating this, you are giving dedicated lines to each of your end customers. So this is a really important tool. Right now we have 1:1 symmetry, which means we are limited by 1:1 in the sense the same frequency across all the endpoints, but going forward within a few months we're going to have adaptive, which means you can set how much bandwidth you want to allocate for each of the end nodes, and automatically the algorithm takes care of it, so that you are able to provide the end customer exactly how much they have promised, or how much ever they are willing to pay for.
Okay, and we did have one other question come in on the question line. Will there be support for 4.7 gigahertz and 4.8 gigahertz in the roadmap? Those are different frequencies, sometimes used with federal applications.
Right. That's a good question. But the PTP 670 is only meant for sub-6 and the unlicensed spectrum. So we don't have it in our roadmap for the 4.7 or the 4.8 bands.
Great. Thank you very much.
So let's take a quick application or like a deployment or a case study kind of thing. So in the red dotted lines, you see 4 towers on the ground which have video surveillances built on top of it. And those 4 lines kind of talk back to the HCMP point, which is on top of a building. You can probably draw a line between one edge to the other, and then you can use that to transmit to your main IT station or your backhaul to some point as well. So you can use HCMP in a lot of different ways. So the earlier example was for retail or like end customers you want, or you can also use it for video surveillances that you have, so you can backhaul most of the traffic and then push it out to your main end station as well.
Okay, we did have one other question. If you want to go back to that scenario slide. Oh, thank you. This is an interesting one. This customer is asking, can you use a PTP 450 to a PTP 670 to do an HCMP scenario?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, you cannot, because the way the 670 is, the architecture or the software is there, you cannot use a 450 as endpoint to connect to a 670. So if you want to use a HCMP scenario, all the radios have to be 670. So that's a compulsory. You cannot use you cannot even use a 650 to replace a 670. If you want to use it in HCMP mode, you can do it in you have to only use a 670 to do it.
Okay, so the scenario would be if you already have a 450, you replace that with a 670, and you can always redeploy the 450 somewhere else.
Right. That's a yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, so now a little bit more technical and how the HCMP framing works. So let's say you have one master and 2 remote nodes that are connected. So let's say if it's a 1:1 ratio, which means there's a 1:1 link between master 1 and node 1 and master and the node 2. So the master transmits twice. So in the first line, you can kind of see number 1 is the master transmits. Number 2 is the remote 1 receives it. There's a small delay which is due to propagation. After the second propagation delay, the remote 2 receives it, and after that there's a small transmission delay, and then this remote 1 transmits, where at that time the remote master receives it, and then this remote number 2 transmits, and then the master receives it. So you can kind of see like the master transmits twice each time to each of the nodes, and then the remote nodes transmit each one. So this is a 1:1 ratio. So you're kind of allocating equal amounts of data to both sides. But going forward, you can have asymmetric, where you can do 3 time slots or 3 bursts for node 1 and 2 bursts for node 2, so that you can kind of get those asymmetric allocations. So some things that you can kind of see, this is like a pictorial representation of how you would see once you have the 670 and once you start playing with it. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people are used to seeing just the point-to-point whenever in the top left picture, that you just have point-to-point and you can kind of set it as master or slave. In this, once you have the HCMP, you can set it as the master or the slave. But so you need you need a license key for the HCMP to act as a master, but for HCMP to act as a remote or a slave, it's by default. So you don't need any keys for HCMP as a slave. You just need a software key which is used for the master part of it. Also, you need to in the bottom picture you have a TDD, which means that you have to mention what is the maximum link. So if you have multiple nodes, what is the longest node that you have, and then you have to write the distance in kilometers. So that gives you the advantage of this actually is used to mitigate the propagation. So when you transmit, there's a slight propagation time that it takes. So you have to keep it to the maximum distance so that you do want to avoid interference with other nodes. And then you have to mention how many ever other nodes you have so that you want to correctly allocate the number of time slots to each of them. So I think I see a question. Is there a recommendation to HCMP distance? The HCMP, so good question. Typically for deployments for HCMP is typically up to 10 to 15 kilometers, which is around 6 to 7 miles. Beyond that, it's really hard to get the throughput distance that we have without suffering on the time, without suffering interference as well. But a typical deployment is going to be short, maybe 1 to 2 miles or maybe 1 to 5 miles on average. But anything beyond that, the throughput is going to take a little bit of a hit. So now I want to cover OTAR, which is over the air. So OTAR stands for over the air rekeying. This is similar to the remote password maintenance that we have. So what does it mean? So this means the secret key used to encrypt over the air data is automatically generated, negotiated, and seamlessly applied at pre-configured intervals without any user intervention. So which means if you have a password that is saved and over a period of time you always need to change your password, you cannot keep the same for 2 years or 3 years, right? Because of a lot of security issues that we have. So you always want to keep changing the password. So say you change the password, so you have to change it across all the radios across all the networks almost at any time. So a lot of times from what we kind of see is like there's always a user error that happens, and that takes a lot of time to reconfigure and make it right. But using this OTAR, it's an automatic feature that you get in. So without user intervention, it simplifies the streamlining process and it eliminates the risk of compromise. So for example, if you make a mistake of providing a secret key, or you just forgot one link and you've done the rest of your network, maybe you've updated 200 links, but you just forgot the one radio link, and that's vulnerable. So it's really hard to keep track of all that. So OTAR automatically generates the key, negotiates it with the remote nodes, as well as applies the key at pre-configured intervals, and you can kind of set it to any time you want to. You can set it to a few days or maybe up 24 hours, and you can keep it 3 months or 2 months. So the benefit of man saving, so the main benefit, you save man hours in manual updating networks with latest security features. So using this, you always have the latest patch, security patch that is available, so that a lot of times when hackers attack you, it's already too late for us to update the patch. So you always want to be updated with the latest security patch that is available. And by using this, you're always one step ahead by automatically updating to the latest patch rather than manually asking a person to come by and update on all 200 or 300 links that you have in your network. So let's do a quick comparison of the PTP 670 versus the PTP 650. So number one, the radio performance is the same. So the PTP 670 and the PTP 650, all the radio performance with respect to antenna, with respect to frequency band, with respect to DSO, channel bandwidth, anything that's related to radio spectrum is the same. The radio price is also the same. So the PTP 670's MSRP is the same as the PTP 650's MSRP. So in the integrated antenna part, so we have actually made it shorter from 14 by 14 inch to a smaller compact 12 by 12. So it's almost like a 1/4 reduction in the size of the radio itself. HCMP is not supported on the PTP 650, and it is supported up to 8 nodes on the PTP 670. One advantage of this PTP 670 is you have full capacity by default. So whereas in the 650 you probably have to buy a license key to get full capacity, to upgrade to a full capacity, but in this PTP 670 you have full capacity by default. There is no need for any security key, or there's no need for a license key to get to full capacity.
Okay, we did have one question that came in. Is the master license for the high-capacity multipoint attached to the radio MAC address, or can it be used in another radio if your first one is broken and has to be replaced?
That's a good question. So mainly we use MAC addresses to talk to other radios. So this is a little bit more in detail, but to give you a general idea, on the master side, you note down what MAC addresses you want to connect to on the remote side, and on the remote side, you kind of write down what MAC addresses you want to talk to. So that kind of forms. So this comes under a group access. So all of the radios should have a unique group, should have the same unique group access ID. So if I have one master and two remotes, I'm just going to number my network as 255. As my group ID, and in that 255, I need to mention the MAC address of my master on both the remotes, and then the MAC address on both the remotes, and both the remote MAC addresses should be on the master, so that there's a triangle that's set up.
Great, thank you.
All right, so another change is the 650, as it comes in the 650, 650S, and the 650L, which is a slightly form factor. We do not have it. We just have the two variations, which is the PTP 670 connectorized and the PTP 670 integrated version. We also have new mounting brackets. These have the tilt mechanism in them as the 650 does, but it looks better and it's much easier to handle, and it's a little bit lighter, but the durability and sturdiness is the same. So rather than the previous one, which is more bulkier, we have tried to make it much more leaner, but keeping the same the application part of it. So what are the benefits of the PTP 670? So one is the faster processing power with more memory. Second is the HCMP compatibility. So we support up to 8 remote nodes, and it has a really high spectral efficiency. It has OTA support. It has a simplified licensing structure, so you don't need to pay for the full capacity key as you did for the 650. And it is, this is the most important part, it is backward compatible with the 650. So what do I mean by that? So the PTP 670 will be backward compatible with the PTP 650 through a special release version. So you're going to get a special release version we're going to launch it probably in September. And once you put in that firmware on the 670, it's going to work exactly as a 650. Right. So let's say you already have a network of 20-25 links, which just uses a 650, and probably you want to buy spares, or you just want to you're happy with the 650 and the way it works, so you just want to use that as part of your network. So you can buy a 670 at the same price as 650, which is the MSRP is the same, and you can get the special firmware version, which is free. You don't have to pay for it. So it's a special firmware that will be available in September. You just put that special firmware on the 670, and it will behave exactly as a 650. Right, so you don't have to change anything. You can ideally put one end of the radio as a 650, and the other end is a 670, which has the 650 software, and they should still be able to talk to each other, no problem at all. So the special release is scheduled at Q4, but we're trying to pull in a little bit early based on the demand that we have. So we are trying to get it at the start of Q4, but we're trying to push it a little earlier to be available in September, but we'll keep you updated on that. Also, all PTP 650 accessories are compatible with the PTP 670 accessories. So any kits, mounting brackets, tilt glands that you have, any of the accessories, cables that you have for the 650 is easily compatible with the PTP 670. So we have, so this is the product launch. We have the product launch and just shipping date on June 21st. So it's been about a month. The response has been great so far. We have, so this is our website at cambiumnetworks.com. Please come over here if you have any further information. We have a lot of specs, white papers, and other materials, brochures that we have, so that you can kind of learn more about the product and understand a little bit more about it. So this is the website that you can log into. So we also please visit our community forum page. We have a lot of good information along with how to getting started with, or network questions that you have, or compatibility questions you have. So we answer all the questions. In this one, we have a couple of, I've just highlighted a couple of them. for a PTP 450i, how do you reduce jitter? So this is one of those questions when you're in the field, you're not sure how to do it, but then if you log on to our community page and search for them, most of the questions pop up. We have answered a lot. Our response time is pretty quick. Within a couple of hours, you get a response for that. And we also have differences, so difference in product line, so you can kind of search through, and also this has a knowledge base. So for example, you're trying to train a new employee who isn't familiar with Cambium. So if he logs onto this page and just reads through a lot of the presentations, a lot of the white papers, a lot of the manuals that we have, it's really easy for him to pick up rather than trying to do it on his own and figuring it out and making mistakes. So we have a lot of knowledge base where you have a lot of information already saved for new hires, which kind of takes some time for them to ramp up. So this is a really good place for them to continue. So yeah, thank you. Please visit our community page at community.cambiumnetworks.com.
Okay, and thank you, Sagar. We did have one question, and that's about the antenna patterns for the PTP 650, the 670 integrated version. Is that included on the spec sheet, or where can those antenna patterns be found?
Those are not included in the spec sheet, but if you visit our community page, I think we should have a link for that, or if you can email, if you just leave a question requesting that, we will definitely post the antenna spec sheets for. So the spec sheets for the 650 and the 670 are really similar because they have the same antenna gain, but there's a small slight variation, but we should be able to provide that if it's already not there in the community website.
Okay, I'll make sure to remind you to post it to the community today. Well, thank you, everybody. Thanks for joining. And if you do have any questions, please post them to the community. We'll post the recording there in a few minutes. And we look forward to seeing you on a future webinar. Thanks again. Goodbye.